The science of biological anthropology. Biological anthropology is a science, the same way that biology, chemistry, and astronomy are. A science is a methodological search for information regarding a particular subject, in our case, biological anthropology. We follow the scientific method while researching genetics, anatomy, and behavior of humans and our human relatives. As a science, we base our understanding on three main principles, or assumptions: natural causality, uniform space and time, and common perception. Natural causality means that all phenomena must be attributed to a natural cause, something within our natural environment. For example, tides are caused by the gravitational forces of the moon, and earthquakes are caused by continental plates shifting on the Earth's surface. In other words, phenomena are not due to a supernatural cause, such as a spirit, ghost, or deity. Now keep in mind that humans are a part of the natural world, so anything we make or cause is still attributed to a natural cause. Now, uniformity in space and time means that all phenomena work the same way, no matter where in the world the event is occurring, or when in time it is doing so. In other words, natural laws don't change whether you're in San Francisco, New York, or Timbuktu, and whether it's 2015, 1850, or 20,000 years ago. Gravity is the same in Sacramento as it is in London, Zimbabwe, or Singapore. This means that in order for something to be tested via scientific study, it has to be repeatable. It has to be able to be done over and over and over again. Now, common perception refers to the fact that all humans have the same senses for interacting with the world. And thus, for something to be tested via science, it has to be observable by anyone using the same senses and the same technology. Anyone can view the moon with the naked eye or with a telescope. And as technology improves and becomes affordable, someday we may all even be able to take a trip to the moon and view it then. What is commonly perceivable is also the only one of the three assumptions that changes, because as technology improves, we can observe things that we would not observe previously. For example, in the 1500s, microscopes didn't exist, so cells were outside the realm of science, because they weren't perceivable. But then in the late 1600s, when the microscope was invented, many new things, including cells, became observable, and thus a part of science. It wasn't until 1950 that Maurice Wilkins used X-ray photography that we were able to observe DNA for the first time. Now, any of us can do so with the help of a scanning electron microscope. So these three assumptions define the realm of science. And it's important to remember that as technology changes, so too does the realm of science, allowing new things into it that were previously unobservable. So to recap, in order for something to be tested via scientific study, it has to be within the realm of nature, it has to be repeatable, and it has to be observable at the time the study is happening. Now, science differs from religion and faith because it requires proof. Religion is belief without the need for proof, or fitting within that realm of science created by the assumptions of natural cause, uniform space and time, and common perception. Now, this allows religion to explain things outside of that realm of science. Things like, what's the meaning of life? What happens to our soul when we die? And why do bad things happen? Okay. This leads us to how we study the science of biological anthropology. Well, we use the same scientific method as all the other sciences, following the same 5 steps: observation, hypothesis, experiment, results, and then conclusion. The first step in the scientific method is observing anything. It can be as simple as your keys falling to the ground when you let them go, or snow falling, lightning flashing, or thunder. In the observation, the researcher is using their senses to observe that phenomenon. Okay, going back to our common perception. For the purposes of this lecture, we're going to pretend the moment that we're doctors working in the neonatal ICU at a hospital. We happen to notice that a lot of the babies in the NICU are underdeveloped, and that they're born to mothers who smoke cigarettes. So this is our observation. From our observation, we're going to ask ourselves a question about that observation. Now, this isn't an actual step in the scientific method, but it's what leads us from our observation to our hypothesis. For example, we may want to know why smoking causes underdeveloped infants. Or we may be asking what chemical in the cigarettes causes lack of fetal development. Regardless of our question, the hypothesis, which is our next step, is the answer proposed by the researcher. Now, because it's an answer, a hypothesis is always a statement, never a question. Okay, we got our question earlier. So our hypothesis may be that the nicotine in cigarettes causes underdevelopment due to lower oxygen levels in the bloodstream of the mother. Or maybe our hypothesis is cigarettes decrease the appetite, thus reducing the calorie intake of pregnant smokers, resulting in poor development of fetuses. Both of these are perfectly valid hypotheses. However, they will result in different experiments since they're focusing on different potential causes for the same phenomena. Now, this leads us to our experiment step, or the test of the hypothesis. There are two main types of experiments, natural and controlled. Though in certain circumstances, an experiment can be partially controlled and partially natural. A controlled experiment is one in which the researcher controls all aspects of the test. For example, I'm interested in the yield of tomato plants. My hypothesis is that early girl tomatoes will produce the most tomatoes. For my experiment, I'm going to plant 10 different tomato varieties, provide them with a specific amount of water, fertilizer, soil pH, sunlight, etc., making sure everything else is being constant. Then, when they produce the fruit, I'm going to keep count of how many each type produces. So in this study, I'm controlling all parts, controlling what type of tomatoes I'm planting, when and where they're being planted, and their care during growth. All these things that I'm controlling, we call controlled variables. Now, one of these controlled variables is the specific thing that I'm testing. In this case, the different types of tomatoes. This variable is going to be called the independent variable. Now, there's only one thing that I'm not able to control, and that's the yield of the plants. Since this is the topic under study, this variable is called the dependent variable, because it depends specifically on the independent variable. A way to think about independent and dependent variables is to remember that the independent variable is the cause, while the dependent variable is the effect. So the tomato type, independent, causes the amount of yield, which is the dependent. Now, there are times when a researcher either can't control all or part of the situation, or sometimes when maybe they shouldn't. For example, researchers studying tornadoes really can't cause a tornado to happen just so they can study it. However, we know that tornadoes occur regularly in certain areas, so the researchers simply wait until one happens naturally and conduct their experiments then. They may even set up the experiment far ahead of time, so that when the tornado actually occurs, their experiment runs without them needing to be present or really do anything. Now, natural experiments are still going to have a dependent and independent variable, just no controlled variables. Now, based on the tornado research above, let's say our hypothesis is tornadoes at low speed cause more damage than high-speed tornadoes. Which is the independent variable? Which is the dependent? Think for a moment. If you said the speed is the independent variable and the damage is the dependent, you're right. Now, once the experiment is concluded, the researcher is going to collect the results and draw a conclusion. Now, if you look at the written lecture, you'll see a table of the results for our tomato experiment. Based on those results, what's your conclusion? My conclusion is that my hypothesis, that early girls will produce the most, isn't right. From my experiment, better boy tomatoes actually produce the highest yield. This conclusion has a validity that my hypothesis didn't. My hypothesis was a guess, based on my knowledge that early girl tomatoes begin producing earlier, than other types of tomatoes. My conclusion that better boy tomatoes produce the highest yield in 2 months' time is supported by my experiment, and thus a provable fact based on my research. In my experiment, better boy tomatoes produce the highest yield. This isn't subject to my personal opinion or interpretation the way a hypothesis is. Now, once you've completed the 5 steps, as a researcher, your job isn't over. If your conclusion was incorrect, you have to go back to your hypothesis, revise it, maybe make a new one, and base that new hypothesis off the results from your experiment. Then you go through the steps again. Now, this may take many experiments before you're able to conclude that your hypothesis is truly correct. However, once it's correct, even if you were right the first time, you still have to go back to conduct the experiment again, just to be sure that the results are repeatable. Now, once you've tested and retested and always get the same results, then, as the researcher, you'll publish the experiment so that others can conduct the same experiment in other places. This is another part of that repeatability necessity of science. Remember that uniform space and time, common perception? Okay? That's what this is. By having others conduct the same experiment, it's proving that the phenomena occurs the same way in multiple places and different times, and that different researchers will perceive the phenomena the same way. Eventually, once the hypothesis has been supported by many different researchers at different times in different places, the hypothesis becomes a scientific theory. To be a scientific theory, it does not have to be accepted by the general population. It just has to be supported via experiment enough times that its validity is not seriously doubted by the scientific community. A couple examples of current theories. Gravity. Yeah, it's just a theory. The heliocentric solar system. The Earth revolving around the sun. Yeah, it's just a theory. Plate tectonics. Okay, the crustal plates moving around on the Earth's mantle. Yeah, that's just a theory too. Okay, and evolution, genetic change over time, is also a theory. Of these examples, very few people doubt gravity or the Earth revolving around the sun. And while there might be some holdouts on plate tectonics, the majority of the general population accepts these with no difficulty. In terms of scientific acceptance, evolution's at the same level of acceptance and has equal amount of proof as the rest of these theories. However, there are many parts of the population that don't accept it. That lack of acceptance in no way reduces its status as a scientific theory. Now, you might be saying to yourself, wait, I thought gravity was a law. Yeah, it is. Right? A law is a generalization of a body of observations that at the time it's made, no exceptions have ever been found. So every time you let go of something, I hold a pencil, I drop it, it falls to the ground. That's the law of gravity. It doesn't explain why the pen falls to the ground. It just makes the generalization that it will always happen that way, no matter what. The theory of gravity, however, explains why things fall. In this case, the larger mass of the Earth attracting the smaller mass of your keys, your pen, your phone, etc. So this method, the scientific method, and the reliance on the 3 assumptions defining the realm of science is the strength of scientific study. It allows us to continue refining our understanding of the world because we continue to test and retest everything, even things that have attained the status of theory and are no longer doubted, because maybe we can refine that too, especially as technology improves.